9 years ago, my mother handed me a trash bag filled with my clothes and said, "If you walk down the aisle with him, you're dead to this family." I walked away, married the love of my life, and built a beautiful world from scratch. For nearly a decade, there was nothing but deafening silence from them. No phone calls, no birthday cards, not even a text when our children were born. But yesterday, my mother stood on the doorstep of my new home holding a designer handbag and a legal-sized manila folder. She didn't ask to see her grandkids. She didn't apologize. Instead, she looked past me at our sprawling estate, handed me a list of financial demands, and said, "It's time you pay back your family." She had no idea that the trap she was setting would completely destroy her. 9 years ago, my world fractured along a single, jagged line. I can still vividly recall the suffocating heat of that August afternoon standing in the formal living room of my childhood home. My name is Chloe, and I am 28 years old now. Looking at me today, you might see a confident woman who matches the picture of strength, but back then, I was just a terrified 19-year-old girl holding a single trash bag filled with my clothes. My mother stood under the grand chandelier, her face twisted in a mask of pure, unadulterated prejudice. The man I loved, Marcus, was waiting for me out in his rusted sedan. He was black. He was ambitious, and to my deeply conservative family, he was completely unacceptable. "If you walk down the aisle with him, you are dead to this family," my mother hissed, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "He isn't one of us, Chloe. You are throwing your entire lineage into the dirt." My father and brothers stood right behind her, nodding in silent, cowardly agreement. They didn't just disapprove, they actively sought to destroy my spirit before I could even step out the door. But as I looked at the trash bag in my hand and then out the window at Marcus, the fear evaporated. I chose love. I chose my own path. I walked out leaving their hatred behind, completely unaware of the lengths they would go to punish me. The transition from a life of suburban comfort to absolute survival was brutal. Marcus and I moved into a cramped fourth-floor walk-up apartment where the radiator hissed through the winter and the windows leaked every time it rained. I took a job working the graveyard shift at a local diner while Marcus spent his days balancing a grueling schedule at a logistics firm and his nights hunched over laptop at our peeling kitchen table. We were exhausted, our bank accounts were frequently in the single digits, and the silence from my parents and brother was absolute. It was during those long, quiet nights listening to the hum of the city outside that I truly realized I was entirely on my own. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Even when things felt completely hopeless, Marcus never lost his drive. He had this visionary idea for a proprietary supply chain optimization software, a digital platform designed to completely revolutionize how global shipping companies track their freight. While my family was busy assuming that we were drowning in the poverty they had condemned us to, I was pulling double shifts just to make sure Marcus had the coffee and the quiet time he needed to code his dreams into reality. We skimped on groceries, skipped medical checkups, and wore worn-out shoes, but we never doubted each other. We built our relationship on a foundation of mutual trust and relentless sweat equity, completely ignoring the ghost of my former family until Marcus finally perfected the prototype. Then the tipping point arrived. After 5 years of relentless development, Marcus's software caught the attention of a major venture capital firm, and overnight the slow burn became a wildfire. His logistics company grew exponentially, transforming from a two-man kitchen operation into a massive tech empire with hundreds of employees. The true climax came last year when the board decided to take the company public. I remember standing on the balcony of the stock exchange, confetti raining down as the opening bell rang and the ticker symbol lit up the screens. By the closing bell, our lives had changed forever. The initial public offering was a historic success, instantly valuing the company in the hundreds of millions and solidifying our personal net worth at a staggering $44 million, a reality that mirrors the incredible turning point. We didn't flaunt our wealth immediately, but we did invest in our peace. We bought a beautiful, sprawling estate nestled behind private gates in an upscale neighborhood, a sanctuary where we could raise our 2 children away from the noise of the world. For the first time in 9 years, I felt completely safe wrapped in the security we had bled for. I completely forgot about the people who had cast me out, assuming they were just a distant, painful memory. But wealth has a strange way of acting like a beacon for vultures. While we were busy celebrating our new life, my estranged family was quietly watching our financial ascent from afar, tracking our success with greedy eyes and plotting their return. 9 years of absolute freezing silence can distort your memory, making you forget just how dangerous a person's voice can be. It was a crisp Tuesday morning when the illusion of our peaceful sanctuary shattered. I was sitting in the sunroom looking out at the manicured lawns of our estate when a sleek late-model luxury vehicle pulled slowly into our private circular driveway. My heart skipped a beat as the driver's side door opened. A woman stepped out, smoothing down her designer trench coat, her heels clicking sharply against the cobblestone. It was my mother. She looked exactly as she had nearly a decade ago, perfectly coiffed, meticulously manicured, and completely devoid of any visible remorse. As I opened the heavy front door, she didn't rush to hug me. She didn't drop her gaze in shame for the 9 years of milestones she had willingly missed. Instead, she looked directly past my shoulder, her cold, calculating eyes sweeping over the soaring ceilings, the marble floors, and the expensive artwork lining our hallway. She effortlessly glided past me into the foyer as if she still owned me, carrying that same patronizing, superior tone I had grown to despise as a child. "Well, Chloe," she said, her voice dripping with a synthetic warmth that made my skin crawl. "You've certainly done well for yourself in this house. It's about time we had a proper family reunion." She walked into our formal living room and unceremoniously dropped a thick legal-size manila folder onto the glass coffee table. Opening it with theatrical precision, she revealed a neatly typed document that filled me with absolute disgust. It was a formal list of financial demands. Without a hint of shame, my mother looked me in the eye and explained that I owed the family for the immense emotional distress my past rebellion had caused them. She demanded that Marcus and I fully liquidate his assets to completely fund my brother's failing commercial real estate business, purchase a luxury condo in her name, and set up a guaranteed monthly stipend of $15,000 for her retirement. Her voice dripped with a terrifying, synthetic warmth as she leaned forward, completely ignoring the fact that she had never once asked about her own grandchildren. "It's only fair, Chloe," she whispered, her hands clasped tightly over her designer handbag. "We are your bloodline, and family assets belong within the family. You've had your fun playing the rebel, but now it's time you do your duty and take care of the people who gave you life." She spoke with an terrifying level of entitlement, fully expecting me to bow under the weight of old childhood guilt. She honestly believed that I was still that same impressionable, frightened 19-year-old girl she had thrown out into the street with a trash bag full of clothes. She had no idea that her arrogant assumptions had blinded her to the massive trap she was walking into, or that I was quietly preparing to dismantle her entire life right there in my living room. Instead of screaming, crying, or letting the rage consume me, I did something my mother never expected. I picked up the papers, sat down, and calmly smiled. As I carefully reviewed the legal jargon inside the folder, my eyes landed on a page that made my blood run cold, but for an entirely different reason. My brother and mother hadn't just come here to beg or manipulate me. They had already crossed a dangerous legal line. Attached to the back of the demands were copies of a bridge loan application for my brother's failing business. In their desperate rush to secure funding before even arriving at my doorstep, they had illegally used my old social security number and personal information to list me as a primary guarantor for a massive $500,000 corporate loan. They thought they could scare me into retroactively signing the papers to cover their tracks. Looking at my mother's smug face, I quietly reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed our corporate legal team, placing the call directly on speakerphone. Within seconds, our chief legal counsel answered. I read the unauthorized loan details aloud and asked him what the immediate consequences were for identity theft, bank fraud, and corporate embezzlement. The line went dead silent in the room as the powerful voice of a top-tier attorney echoed through the speakers, calmly stating that we had more than enough irrefutable evidence to initiate immediate federal prosecution and freeze all associated assets. The synthetic warmth vanished from my mother's eyes, replaced by a sudden, frantic panic as she realized her desperate financial trap had just completely backfired. The color completely drained from my mother's face as she snatched the manila folder off the table, stumbling over her own heels in a desperate rush to flee my home before the police could be called. But the damage was already done. Within 48 hours, our legal team filed formal charges, and the subsequent federal investigation exposed the full depth of their financial corruption. My brother's fraudulent business collapsed into immediate bankruptcy, and both he and my mother were forced to liquidate everything they owned just to avoid substantial prison time. They wanted to destroy my life for a second time, but instead, they ended up completely ruining themselves. Meanwhile, Marcus and I used a significant portion of our wealth to establish a community foundation that provides housing and educational grants for young adults who have been unjustly disowned or cast out by their families. Looking back at the 19-year-old girl with the trash bag, I am so incredibly proud that she chose love over fear. We built a beautiful, $44 million legacy on a foundation of pure resilience, proving that true family isn't about bloodlines. It's about who stands by you when you have absolutely nothing. Now, I want to ask you who listened to my journey, what would you have done if your family showed up after 9 years of freezing silence? Would you have shown mercy, or would you have let the law take its course? Comment your thoughts down below. I'm also leaving 2 of our channel's favorite stories right here on the final screen that will absolutely shock you. Thank you so much for watching until the very end.